close are we?
Like,
No,
I'm
second.
good whenever everyone else
Let's
is
go.
good.
So you all are.
Sal, what are you doing?
I'm sorry, I couldn't find the room because you changed it 2 minutes after the start time.
Okay, that's all right.
So you both are okay with being filmed?
Yes.
You're holding up the tournament, Lawrence.
I just want to make a big one. Please.
Is everyone good?
I have 0 water. Okay.
Go.
I'm gonna sneak and see if Dave. Close the door.
Please. Okay. Is everyone good?
Yep.
Travis, you good too? Okay. The standard is maximizing expected well-being. First, phenomenal perspective proves that pleasure is intrinsically good. Stated Babu 08. Phenomenal perspective is reliable, like visual perception features who could reliably formally set by the states which is a factor reproducible and pleasure is good as a byproduct of phenomenal perspective is reliably caused even if other moral beliefs aren't in our ability to understand the introspective experience of others convince us to utilitarianism. Stated Babu 08. One can consider perspective makes that they're good experiences just as one can look at yellow and its brightness. One can experience pleasure and recognize its goodness without considering appreciating other things are better than the one for just something more brightness. My visual feels the other plus the back one has it, one feels good. Phenomenal perspective can produce something while others are good and others are bad. And the second, the using this terrain as a heuristic is a powerful learning tool for liberations in I-14. Use government as a heuristic to explore effects and contexts where they're deployed. Governmentality is a heuristic conduct inquiries based on conduct practices of the government resistant a heuristic essential for debating political agency. Governmentality is to rely on the same perspectives of liberal order and reinforces the liberals' conceptualization of power. Political action is working to play the cards that are dealt with the US to produce practical effects. Third, moral uncertainty means that preventing extinction should be our highest priority. Bostrom 12. Moral uncertainty signifies that our present action may be confused if we are uncertain there's a greater value for preserving our ability to recognize values here in future accordingly ensuring there will be future and is the best way to increase future value. Solvency. Resolve. The United States federal government should enter all citizens turning 18 to a lottery-based draft in the Army, National Guard, and the Army Reserve like 13. I recommend the U.S. initiate a lottery-based draft in the Army, National Guard, and the Army Reserve. All citizens in their 18th birthday is called to have 3 options. First, serve 6 years in the reserve after basic training. If the reserve vessel just deploy for 1 year, the military commitment is including second, serve 2 years in the active Army or the Marine Corps. Third, go to the college, be enrolled in the RTC. This would improve the quality of the cadets across all services. Individuals would not be eligible for benefits. 2 million turning 18 is just a small number. We conscripted, but they would be high quality, include every socioeconomic without voluntary. Unless we would continue adverse consequences for those who fail to fulfill their military obligation would be required. The military may inject a conscript that will be difficult to motivate, train, and discipline. Generations of military leaders motivated, trained, and disciplined conscript and won the war with conscripts, and the plan solves personnel shortages, excessive deployments, and the financial burden of the AVF like 13. Conscription creates a state of forces not receptive to recruit crisis. It provides already access to trained forces within 30 days and ability to sustain ratios and the desired ratios. Those desired just reduce the PTSD drug use is not the problem. So which all the violations, dwell down policies of contributing skills that's contributed to the force reduce contractors, information tech, intelligence analysis, and language skills. Advantage 1 is readiness. The all volunteer force is unsustainable, will collapse and isolate 4 internal links. First, a recruitment crisis is on the horizon. Propensity to serve and eligibility are record lows like 13. The OPC, which tripled the growing number of asthma, will reduce the pool of recruits at 25.1% dropout rate with persons able to meet the standards of military service, 30% recruiting success in the function of the 5% of the population that both willing and able to serve. A 10% decline in propensity translated to 4% down in the list of only propensity 2000 was 12%, 29% drops since 1984. One of the most powerful influences of the word of mouth, which was rated morale at an all-time low. 30% of eligible population is able to serve, 12% of the low, 3.6% slightly entered the military, both have declined recently. The 3.6% includes only those who meet minimum quality requirements. At present, trends continue to grow. The military is going to be overused Thursday when the military is going to be asked to do the impossible. Second, personnel shortages force a reliance on private contractors, which compromise operational command and strategic capability. Multiple warrants like 13. The AVF cannot recruit a sufficient number to prosecute wars without the ability to expand the force quickly. It's difficult to do in the AVF, and the contractors present tactical operational problems. First, contractors do not take order. Second, contractors harm discipline, making express use of certain members of thorough contract agencies to recruit service members away from the military. Fourth, contractors must be situated by the military when they find themselves in a dangerous situation. Be subject to contract force structure at the expense of the unity operational on the battlefield. The most compelling resistance the military could lose its operation relying on the contract to do with the DOT historically done internally. This redistribution of contract makes the total loss of capability, real possibility. The military monitors readiness unit contractors are not subject to inspections to be lower whether they're ready. Two late contractors are subject to work stoppages due to payment disputes, solving the risk of operation becoming a subject. The AVF is ability to affirmative invest in the ready to have the capacity to develop as intelligence analysts. All of you consider the military. The AVF requires simply volunteers with requisite capabilities. Otherwise, it risks being the mercy of contractors committed to profit rather than operational excellence. Third, the AVF is financially unsustainable. Personnel costs are skyrocketing like 13. The AVF has become unbearably expensive for diverse nation, with passing the cost per person increased by 46%. Personnel costs continue to grow at that rate. Plus, the personnel costs will consume the entire defense budget by 2030. Lifecycle costs trends supporting the AVF are unsustainable. Officials have underscored this problem as personnel costs has grown by 90% since 2001. From cost standpoint, the AVF is unsustainable, and AVF is much more expensive than conscription enlistment bonuses, and recruiting and healthcare costs make the AVF economically infeasible, like 13. Recruiting costs have arisen to $4 billion per year. This is not including enlistment bonuses, so the AVF is generally known for what costs as healthcare costs and dependence obligation to rise in 72 $81 billion. In 13, it was $500 billion, 6% a year compounded increase to which personnel costs were a significant contribution. Personnel costs have arisen 46% over the decade. And fourth is our military is exhausted, shortened dwell times, and excessive redeployments kill readiness, late 13. Soldiers not employed for medical reasons were to 60% in 2012. 9,000 soldiers were in the Buddha Warrior Pregnant Sergeant Measure was killed in Afghanistan on his 14th deployment. 13,000 soldiers spent for cumulative in Iraq and Afghanistan. 47% of Army personnel were deployed on their second or greater combat to repeat exposure to combat makes these wars different. All the soldiers from separated from the Army at the end of the commitment since 2002. More than 120,000 soldiers have their active service extended by stop loss, and readiness deters global conflicts. French 17. Without America maintaining its role as the guarantor of safety, the world is more likely to resort to global conflict. American achievements, the advanced powers hostile to peace. Trump has a brief commitment to NATO and accelerate the fight against the ISIS and Russian missile defense. South Korea exerting more biocritical power, but not less than every arena where Microsoft under rivals have forwarded and genocidal nightmare in Iraq. Chinese aggressive moves in the southeast, and Russia's military aggression in Ukraine and South America retreat emboldened enemies. No nation can protect the U.S. Even France, Britain, and Japan over a decade deployed forces and the fraction force had the international order cannot stand if the U.S. advocates the American is indispensable peace to anyone who thinks that the U.S. can change its commitments on the current unstable list is not living in the real world, and war engenders worse forms of repression and suppression of rights. Goldstein 1. Activists press on the subject of injustice is called where the evidence suggests the causality runs the other way. War is not a product of a single cause. War has fueled and sustained other justices. If you want social justice, work for peace. Emphasis on justice as the main cause of war seems to be empirically inadequate, and the readiness solves terrorism, like 13. If we believe that we will never employ military force of the chocolate war will deliver worse than how we the forces that critical these two rational positions collide with a different reality. In addition, we face terrorism. If Jones requires the surface of the upper ends of the intelligence distribution, cyberspace where we require the higher the military is engaged in war for talent that may be losing power sector, and we will engage in significant hot operations. The future are likely to be capable and tenacious. Advantage 2 is mental health. Excessive deployment causes PTSD, and chronic mental health programs empiric show, like 13. PTSD is a security of Iraq against driving PTSD rarities that repeat deployment with reduced dwell time, and PTSD studies indicate that a second deployment is levels the probability PTSD is about PTSD manifests in physical, behavioral, psychological assessments. The percentage of veterans that are Iraq and Afghanistan suffer from PTSD, 30%, only 50% will get treatment. Their impact is suicide. Every day, 18 veterans will take their own life, late 13. At the end of the 2012, 487 members committed suicide compared to 210 who died in combat. The current rate of suicide in the military is 3 times what it was in 2001 after having between 2001 and 2006. Veterans account for 20% of the 30,000 suicide committed each year. 18 U.S. military veterans take their lives each day. Veterans were twice as likely to commit suicide as non-veterans.
You ready?
Yep.
What is pleasure?
Goodness.
What does that mean? What
So-
is goodness? Can you give me like a quantifiable, like a material action that proves pleasure is goodness, or an example of pleasure?
Sure. So, like, an action that releases dopamine, the chemical in your brain, would be an action that is pleasurable. The argument in Siddhababu is that I know that when if I know that as pleasure increases, the
I want you
state
to
of
give me a
affairs
list
improves.
of actions that are pleasurable, and that the 1AC would defend.
Why?
Just cause.
I don't. I mean, like,
It's a question of a framing issue, so yeah, it's relevant to the 1AC.
pleasure. Okay. Things like laughing is pleasurable. That releases dopamine.
Laughing is pleasurable, okay.
Sex releases dopamine.
Even like
working
sarcastic
out.
laughter, is that pleasurable for the other person?
What?
Is sarcastic laughter pleasurable for the other person who's being made
What
fun
is
of?
sarcastic laughter?
Someone can laugh and be making fun
A
of
person who
somebody.
is laughing, genuinely laughing, is experiencing pleasure.
Okay.
That releases dopamine.
Sure. So the Zanotti evidence, why is the state redeemable?
So the Zanotti evidence says that using the state as a heuristic, as a learning tool for liberation, doesn't really make a claim about
Okay.
state
So you
redeemability.
defended this AF, let's say, for a lot. I debated this in the round robin. You read it a lot of times at the tournament. How much more role playing do we need to create these sort of skills? It seems to me you know a lot about the state.
That's a weird question. So the argument is that learning about how the state operates is the best way to
Do you not know
make
how
any
the state
sort of
operates?
change. So I guess it's like a sliding scale question.
Okay,
It's not like,
so
we
is
learned
there
about the
ever a
state once and that's
bright line?
sufficient.
Is there ever a bright line to which we know we've learned enough from the state?
Perhaps that's not the argument.
Can you give me that bright line?
So that's not an argument that I should have to take
Yes.
a stance on. This argument is just that the reading of the 1AC, or that my model of debate is good because it relies on an understanding of the state, and understanding
That
how the
wasn't
state
answer the
operates
question,
is good.
but that's fine. So the PMC stuff, Trump said he would stop using PMCs in places like Afghanistan. Why is this unique?
So I mean, Trump can say that, but the issue
Like they literally are not sending PMCs. Like the Attorney General said. They
okay,
wouldn't
then
do
that
it.
seems to prove that that the recruitment crisis is even more inherent, because if
What?
we're stopped relying on PMCs and we cannot
We've
conscript
already
more people.
stopped relying on PMCs in the status
Okay,
quo.
well, first, That's not true.
Okay,
Even if
wait,
it's
which line in the evidence indicates that? Because this is from not 2017.
Sure. So even if Trump says that we won't use PMCs in Afghanistan, we still have other foreign commitments abroad in which PMCs are necessary.
Like where?
The
Where does
other
the card
argument,
say? Wait, where does the card say like it'll be not like in other places like?
So the entirety of the contractor's argument is because we do not have enough voluntary enlistments, we have to hire other people.
Okay,
So that just proves our inherency for the recruitment crisis if we also stop using PMCs in one area in terms
Why
of
is drug
commitment.
abuse bad? You said pleasure is good. Isn't drug abuse an example?
I
of
don't
pleasure?
read that argument.
Lige 13.
That I stopped reading The Second Advantage after the suicide impact.
Oh really? Okay. Can you just tell me what you cut out then?
What?
Can you just tell me what you cut out then?
After the suicide impact. I didn't read anything.
The domestic violence wasn't read?
No.
Oh, okay. I'll send out the one and see then. Actually, this is like cheating. I have to delete some stuff off the case. I'll take some. Sorry. Okay. 451. Save it. I'll send it out. Is Dubs really spelled? Oh yeah, it is. Check it. Are we all good?
So it's just one in case.
Yep, one off in case.
Is there an order on case?
Top down. Good. Subjectivity is fluid. We are defined by our relations to other objects and objects. There's no static notion of identity, but rather truth is contextually changing balance. For our body has no interior truth. Their meaning is only through external connection to affects. We know nothing about body unless we know what can do. There is no so the subject nothing more, nothing less than the particular way in the body. Bodies we organize the post and line social with the social reduces the complex into discrete categories. Meaning becomes less or lower, more feminine or more less or more masculine depending on the degrees to which it comes first. And in New Zealand, when eligible draftees escaped to the US, they were labeled as deviant and hunted down by the government to force them to conscript. There's no end to global state action besides the control over bodies. This static notions of subjectivity are violent and prevents becoming because bodies are given identity to follow. You are a veteran or you are not eligible, etc. Henry VIII, the natural right register established with the administrative forces within state provided calculate to which promote the correct distribution of nation's population pursuit of the government's warring borders represents variation of the much could be controlled calibrates the advanced particular technical assemblies created and recreated states pursue the shady government strategies problem purposes of the purity proposed by the travel of the own military agent in order to avoid the national register. They continue. Henry VIII concern led to the prime minister announced regulation were being considered new passports were required. They were the first attempts to control the people wishing to leave the use of emergency status. WRA 1914 introduced movement control as a temporary measure to as widely repeated elsewhere. The German authorities were concerned with controlling movements in order to keep soldiering pressure recruits, and liberalism thrives on the fear of the masses, cultivating paranoia in which they read to seize the power of the state, propagates images of suffering, so that we fluctuate to keep us secure from danger. We begin to desire our own oppression. Bell. Life is constituted by motion. Desire only becomes which is a price of the state fronted to do. The state fronted assembles exists as a paradigm of doing so, promotes the promise of existence, surrender, be saved, and pursues extent of the economy and every fiber human life stands within a war machine. Thy object of this machine is a ghost warrior, crane like a power from a meter, blinking, standing weight against spectral enemy, or submerged in now. State of permanent emergency, state of acceptable laws of suspended indefinitely liberals and fears for participating even the velvet touch one of them we even desire means the level of governmentality we come to desire and domination participating kind of political cannibalism where we want the very things are undercut liberties liberals and promotes to secure and ceding any form of authority. The state legitimizes dominance and justifies and imposes control over subjectivity. That concession is inherently dangerous. The state imposes ideological categories on men bodies by rigidifying and organizing identities into binaries. You're either man or woman. Imposing static conceptions of reality spreads violence because deviant bodies are labeled as other rows. 2000 proposes the codes of the argument for zero tolerance policy sanctions against officers accompanied by scheming for naming, scheming, and blaming the prisoners of being capacity, top life skills, situation, crime control, attempts to portray the criminals, rational agent, introduce the crime in light of calculus, potential cost, and benefits and organized spiritual lacking normal moral control. The other chart of the assembly, college, hyper technology, the government linking together forms judgment modes to protect with aspirations, reducing certain outcomes and conduct of the conduct of the government, such analysis to reframe the roles between the state and the analysis of control and regulation. This generates an intrinsic heterogeneity, contestability, and mobility, and practices with the government contests, and further enhancement strategies seeking to foster and shape such capacities that were enacted in ways broadly consistent with other particular objectives. And this outweighs a ontology that have to be subject to ontological damnation because society never sought to care for them that explains good to the violence of black bodies, the treatment of homeless people, the method of that makes it impossible to create resistance. B turns the case the other repeats the same hearts it talks about because bodies are cast out, reinforcing oppression in the process of overcoding life. Endless violence is imposed on bodies in an attempt to exterminate otherness. Deleuze in Quadri 80, the abstract faciality seems a role selective response to the binary relation. Yes, no type, everyone a bunch of issue rejects space that uncompromising seems to be the white wall is always expanding and the black hole functions repeatedly abstract machine as you described overall it's clear the new world deviants detector the facility machine does not restrict the individual case but operates just in case of general fashion racism operates the determination of decrease in deviance in relation to white man face. There's no exterior no people on the outside. There's only people who should be like us and whose crime should be not in. The alternative to act as a war machine is not about liberal but rather nomadic potential of exceeding state imposed identity construction. Deleuze and Guattari 80 in the state requires them to be according to to become rioting space. The nomads form the war machine right absolute state. Each time there's a rioting neurotic potentials appear being in states as those were smooth as convert and capture the state part smooth and wicked that's right. Nomadism becomes a worldwide war machines organization exceeds state apparatuses and the role of domestic evolves in the best methodology to embrace multiplicity office includes anything improvement subject to explore their experience and techniques for interacting with outside world. If we win our fluidity office you can never vote on that framework. Structural analyses are key. They critique its interrogation of the material. The only thing that exists in the material reality but the human mind cannot possibly comprehend its complexity. This necessitates abstraction within the mind. Colbrook. This is not ancient realistic reality and all of it different complex chemistry due to the image we have formed in reality infinite human ways. They're not subject to or perceive their impersonal planes of perception which feel subject to folding. Your form of materialism recreates problems that focus on material leads people not carrying out action because something bad might happen. This chills action laws of status quo to continue which means the AC solvency is never achieved. The case the framing debate the defense of rights is bankrupt action through government breaks down the body into its rights stripping away the humanity by codifying every aspect and index into an Excel spreadsheet. You use utilitarian calculus or more the contractor body integrity faces toward the realistic technology fragment the person habits subject is visual when visualization right to break down the body into functions of relation unity with the right to counterarguments analysis and dismembers the body right to privacy and license to general area with patients on privacy and right to use service the matter of products to communicate when not eating food well freeman does the same thing likes to be not right of both the reduction of the person's right to recognize the man's rights of women who appears by the differentiated distinction nakedness and simplicity. There are different conceptions of pain and pleasure objectively determining something as pain as bad as because it prohibits identifying as other identities. For example the bully and the sarcastic laver and cross it guns and naughty one co-option. Once we learn more about the state they learn more proof status revolutions fail. 2 definition of a policymaker is shitty. It denies the critique claim that the status quo and the state is bad. 3 defining yourself as policymakers is even worse. 8 if we went to say the actually I already said that argument. 4 the political is bad right now. The Trump is president and Congress read that our is the option that challenges the institution by changing our revolutionary strategy. You've also can see there's no bright line to policymakers which will always be policymakers as an extension of the colonial state on Boston. 1 non-unique every action has no risk of it no matter how new it might be. If you do that risk simply also exists if we don't do that. 2 moral or uncertainty means if I'm winning my framework through your authors 2 people die but that's not every single person. Well there's no access to Boston. 4 we become distracted by preventing an extremely small change of something happening. We actually disregard any sense of morals because we absolve ourselves in the own trying to prevent execution. For example when we try to minimize existential risk we should justify killing our population give the human race life value to life independently to exchange because bodies are allowed to be institutionalized and codified for whatever purposes. Solvency 1 during peacetime only small people get drafted. Lots of lives volunteers decline with the draft. People are wanting to serve wait to get drafted focus on other aspects of life that equates to small gain in personnel. 2 during war when inequality or evidence is a large number of people be drafted. All of our evidence over quantifies our Biden turned the case either way. There's some offense on case advantage. 1 draft don't stop the war. Policymakers don't care. Gomez 12 armed workers are currently having no problems with recruiting in most cases are recruiting over 100% of targets are definitely nothing limited the burden of war units rotating and every state of experience individuals will rotate to different units on different deployment schedule returning in the social who do not have as much time at home and would like to have no impact on policymakers decision making because the chance of sons being drafted is so minuscule and outweighs takes your evidence into account either not enough eligible or your lower standards of bites and deterrents are enough to eligible to scope and Trump is gathering personnel from allies and decreasing regulations. Trump 17 I've already lifted restriction on fighters. We will matter 30 American armed forces to target terrorist retribution be passed part of after NATO allies. The global parties is already strategy with additional troop funding. If they were confident they will. And on defense contracts, one of the ways to increase the PMCs, low quality troops force Trump to hire 2 PMCs are not used right now. Trump has stopped using Afghanis to the schools of 3 cases defense always kid. Trump doesn't care about what people think or what PMCs do. On internal link 3, there's no impact to the economy. Skip the card. The internal link 4 plan guts military readiness, low motivation, experience and cohesion. Bando 12 volunteer army because high standards for because want to service 60 program better than draftees want to AVF is higher re-enlistment rates, reduce turnover and enhances experience. Conscript and weaken the military. New accession would be bright education motivated, resulting in less experience for the force would be driving the costing more lives than achieving for your objectives and advantage to the rich. That exacerbates economic inequality and draftees and their families grow. 16 subjects contributed veteran fathers are likely in 2011 psychological PTSD, which many Vietnam veterans suffer affects the whole family, causes behavioral problems, children unbalanced, and causes found that nice men where they started from behind and took decades to catch up during a time they're earning less, also tend to settle in neighborhoods that were less nice. These factors that affect children were always on time frame, drafting place in struggle civilizations 1 year, but drafting inflicts poverty lasts for decades. Yeah. Did you get what I cut out?
Okay, so on advantage 2.
I just skipped that first card. And then read Glow. And then I didn't read Fight Weiss. And I didn't read the Econ card, but I read the Analytic.
Wait, you didn't read Bando either?
I did read Bando. I didn't read Chapman.
Wait, sorry.
can also just send out a new version.
Yeah, maybe do that.
Okay.
Actually, no, I got everything
Alright,
up.
sounds
Okay. Ready?
Yep.
All right. Status of the critique.
Unconditional.
Is the policy of the affirmative possible in the world of the
No,
alternative?
it's not a pick.
Okay. What part of the app does the critique disagree with?
I would say the entire framing of the app and then the substance of the app. Do you want me to go through the links?
No, I don't want you to go through the links. I want you to identify parts of the app that you would say is inconsistent with your
Okay,
criticism.
I will. So the first is the framing. We say util is bad. Do you want me to explain why, or just go through?
Yeah.
All?
So
Okay.
how
Util
is
is bad.
util inconsistent with subjectivity?
Because it treats every subject as having inherent moral worth and treating them equally. Rather, we say that each subject has a different
Wait,
identity.
util does not identify universal truths and does not condemn actions as intrinsically bad. In what way is like util an objective moral theory?
Does not condemn actions
as intrinsically bad. We say that like you can determine what actions
No,
are
the
bad.
argument is that the way you determine whether actions are bad or not are bad because you treat every individual as equal when that is not true.
Wait, so all
Subjectivity
individuals
says
are
that.
not equal?
Yes, the subjectivity claim is that people are defined by their relationships to other things. Nobody has an intrinsic moral worth, i.e. they're always statically defined as moral equals this amount, but rather that is constantly in flux because of the
this sounds
actions they take,
repugnant.
the relations they
Individuals are not equal to one another. I am not equal
That
to you.
is literally not the argument.
I'm
We are
pretty sure I
equal-
repeated
We are
verbatim what
equal
you
right
just
now
said.
because we are both debating, but we are unequal in the fact that we have different identities. I'm standing up with a stand that's standing up, but you are standing up with a stand without a stand, which indicates we are still we still have fluid identities and different subjectivities, even though
Alright,
which proves that there's always flux in moral
Okay,
worth.
what other parts of the app do you disagree with? Is
The
preventing
pain part-
extinction bad?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, sorry,
why?
Sorry. Preventing extinction depends on the method, right? We say the AF leads to extinction based on the impact. That was the analytic under Bostrom.
What
but
about the app leads to extinction?
Because you allow for states to have rigid control over bodies, allow them to do whatever. For example,
In
the
what way does the AF allow this?
Specifically, the AF decreases. This is just a real example. The AF decreases military experiences, and you say that Trump needs people right now. You empower Trump with the people to do whatever he wants. If we win our critique claims, that means Trump does not care about
so
what
if
people think.
we win that our threats are real, if we win our case debate.
Because it's also a question of framing. You may take out that one link, but there's multiple links.
Okay, that's fine. So independent of so is preventing like legitimate threats of extinction?
What does legitimate threats mean? Like
You tell me.
100% probability, 90% probability. We say like the discussion of legitimacy is incorrect.
In what way does
because
the
it's-
AF cede total authority to the state?
Okay, that's all this Zanardi evidence. Zanardi arguments along with the link debate. The argument is that when you allow the government to like exert its control over like,
The
debaters-
alternative, you say it's to act as the war machine. What does that mean?
So we don't like it's not a postcard advocacy, right? So the argument is that every single ballot in this round should be a reorientation of how we view the state and some sort of
What does the alternative do to resolve the state?
resolve the state. We say it begins the process of like
In what
revolutionary
way?
potentials, and that's also like the rejection of the affirmative's framing of subjectivity and biological like importance. Importance is probably the wrong word, but sorry. Sorry.
47 seconds.
You said 47.
Hmm?
You said 47.
Yes. Okay, sending this. Okay.
Is there only one analytic, or are there more?
What?
Is there only one analytic, or are there more?
What? I don't know what you mean by that.
Like on the, like that are pre-written.
Oh, yeah, that's the only one.
Okay.
I think. Okay, the order is going to be the case in order of the advantage, then the framework, and then the critique.
Really great question. Do people like jump analytics now?
Yeah, I've had that happen twice to me. Well,
Wait, you
I
mean
can't
jump by like flash analytics?
Like is it community consensus that you flash your analytics now as well?
Sort of like a personal choice, but most people just do.
I like it, but 2 rounds this tournament, people might not. I can't say the names
Debate
on my
used to be
camera,
hard.
but what?
Debate used to be hard.
Okay, is everyone good?
Yeah.
Okay. The AVF is unsustainable, will collapse an incoming recruitment crisis, and the economic infeasibility prove it is unsustainable. Readiness solves great power war, and the AF is tried, even if you win a slight decrease in troop quality is outweighed by the power vacuum and global conflict that would ensue from the total collapse of the military, and the case outweighs the critique, proving that our representations are proving that the consequence of the plan will actually occur, proves that our representations outside which outweighs. Now, line by line on your arguments, you say that drafts don't stop war. However, our argument is that increasing skin in the game leads to strategic deployments of force, and it's because it affects more people. The second is that our internal link does not rely on the draft stopping war. Our argument is that increasing readiness is key to maintaining U.S. U.S. commitments abroad. Trump is not increasing standards. Your evidence proves your own argument proves why conscription is necessary, because otherwise the quality of the troop decreases. Your own argument is that Trump is gathering allies abroad and decreasing the standards so that more people can join, which proves that he actually is increasing the hiring of PMCs. But we're not going for PMCs internal link anyways. You say that there's no impact to the economy. Our argument is that the large economic infeasibility of the ABF prove that it's unsustainable. Personnel costs are consuming the defense budget, which means that we don't have a defense budget to go into other parts of the military, and the conscription does not decrease readiness. Morale is non-unique. It is an all-time low, and exhaustion outweighs little experience, because our argument is even if you have a highly experienced force now, that is irrelevant because they are so exhausted that they are inept and are useless, and the plan is not bad for poverty. Your evidence is specific to Vietnam. However, our drafting policy is different. We do not allow for exemptions that privilege the rich elite during the Vietnam draft. Now, the framing arguments. We will provide a defense for every one of our justifications. The first is our Sinababu evidence, which proves that phenomenal introspection proves that pleasure is intrinsically good. This also, you say that our defense of rights is bankrupt. That we are not a defense of rights. UTIL does not say that there are certain universal truths. Rather, that through the consequences of actions we can determine what is good or bad. We do not say that anything is intrinsically bad, which proves that we are also a no link to the critique because we are consistent with subjectivity. You say that there are different conceptions of pain and pleasure. This also proves that we are consistent with subjectivity because individuals can determine what is pleasurable for you and what is pleasurable and what is painful for other people. On the Zanotti evidence, we are a government as a heuristic, which proves that our model of debate is good. We are not a defense of the government. We do not say any prescriptive or normative statements. Rather, that using the government as a tool is key effective toward liberation. This you miss all of your responses misunderstand what our arguments is. This is not necessarily that I am a policymaker and that role playing is good. Rather, just using the state and learning about it is an effective tool for political liberation. The Bostrom argument proves that moral uncertainty preventing moral uncertainty is a key to future value. All of your arguments are about policy paralysis. However, our argument, however, you can use probability to determine which impacts we should prioritize. Now, the critique. The first is no link. We are winning. Our threats are real, which proves that fear of death is justified in this instance. The concession of Sinababu also proves that fear of death is inevitable. It's rooted in evolutionary programming, which determined that I have a phenomenological aversion to pain and pursuit for pleasure. The second argument is that I should be able to weigh the half against the K. The case often should matter to the extent that I prove my representation and the frame of moves. 6 minutes face the office, restarts the wrong in 1 hour, which kills policy education. The second is the judge can choose their reason for affirming. No reason why every argument I have to make has to be part of the final package, otherwise I can't collapse in subsequent speeches, which kills F strategy. Don't vote on the fact that the plan increases readiness. Vote on the plan the fact that the plan decreases PTSD. In the case outweighs reducing the risk of a situation by even a 10th percentage point, outweighs massive structural violence. Bostrom 12. Exercise catastrophes greater than 16 implies the value of reducing as restricted for 1 percentage points 100 times the value of a million implies the highest reduction existential risk is a value greater than the definite provisions to saving 1 billion lives. Permutation do both. The net benefit is the fact that we do prevent extinction, and permutation do the alternative in all of the instances except for the affirmative where we are winning that our threats are justified. Abstract questioning fails. Debate should center on concrete alternatives. Ryan 12. The academic left spot is good at critique of the report. Realistic alternative. Phase 1 alter critique. Phase 2 of question mark. Phase 3 revolution. People need to hear and understand. We make concrete proposals. We are intellectually bankrupt. Saying revolution is not the answer without addressing any infrastructural questions. Cut the card there and frame the debate on consequences. Laws should not be passed if they are meant to if they harm the people they're supposed to protect.
So can I just get the stuff you read? There was like,
Is it not in that doc? Okay.
yeah, there was analytics that were not in the doc.
Yeah, right.
Also,
Feel like business
the
people.
Bostrom comes first stuff wasn't in there.
Okay. I just resent the doc.
Okay. Give me a sec. No, this isn't the right one still. Oh, unless you, nope, it is. You just added to the end. You didn't read the warning card, did you?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I took like 9 seconds before. I forgot to calculate that now. The order will be the critique, then the case, overview, and critique.
Still prep on top of analytics.
What?
No speak. I'm sorry, what was the order again?
Overview on the critique case. On the case, it'll be the advantage scenario, then the framework. Actually, framework, then the advantage. I just decided the other way. Ready?
Yep.
The debate is already over. You conceded our subjectivity claims. Every subject is defined by its relationships to other subject. There's no static conception of identity. Nothing is an intrinsic meaning or valid context. Is always important, always relevant. Think of a bike if somebody's using it as a method of transportation, but when it is a museum, it's a mode of art which proves that nothing is intrinsically valuable. There's no intrinsic static definitions to anything. You may say a bike has 2 wheels, but that fails to explain the complexity of the bike, which proves our structuralism critiques. You can never use one characteristic of an object to define it, which disproves the pleasure analysis that one of your go for. It means you immediately vote negatively. Conception of reality is incorrect. Means are rolled about ways because it creates authentic connections, which we can actually guide action. You've conceded that structuralism is key. That a complete interrogation of the system is important because otherwise it allows for inconsistencies and contingency where people can say this form of fascism is good, which link turns the out because it says a precedent that they can do whatever they want. The argument here is that your materialism is violent because you fail to conceive what it means to be a human. What those connections are like, i.e., death is not always bad, or that pleasure is not always good, which proves our rolled about critique is that materialism is violent because you cannot comprehend the complexity of human subjects. Extent this outweighs as multiplicity is key to solvency. Deviant bodies are excluded from affirming user policy will never truly provide pragmatic change for all identities, which means your policy proposal will never solve terminal defense against the one AC. BUO on our subjectivity claims is the only true way to engage with the world. Is role-playing is the static interpretation of creating identities and role and policy making. Now we'll line by line your arguments. You say pure depth is good. No, that you cross away the framing arguments that this creates threat construction in which the U.S. can just say no. We'll go to war right now, so we can do whatever we want, which justifies the rigidification of bodies and allows them to just put every single person into a job, which is our link debate, which you have conceded that the link debate here will go for the mobility control dissent. That's Henry. 8 states are completely obsessed with controlling over territories because controlling the space where people exist is key to keep their identity static. Imperialist states keep colonizing to deem populations are as not eligible or eligible, which opposes a static conception of identity on certain people, which creates microfascism because it allows people to internalize certain forms of violence, i.e., when people are told you are not a man, you can either be a man or woman, but not in the middle, which just denounces that form of fluidity that the critique desires and kills multiplicity, i.e., the state says you can only be in the military when you're 18 to 15, which it identifies those are the only valuable people. The one here proves this very well. You said some people are useless or inept, which probably proves the link turn, probably proves the link to the critique because you deem bodies as being experienced or not. The next argument is the judge can choose. No, this is severance because the entirety of the one issue you should hold them to the representation. Otherwise, severance is a voting issue. We can never have negative ground, which kills education and fairness too. No, they cannot just choose whatever. You have to vote on the roll of ballot, which you conceded that you decrease multiplicity in 3. This kills. This means affirmative is always because judges can just vote on a cool app that they like. And you say with 6 minutes and one issue offense. No, you have not justified why this is a hard debate. Is good debate. You're able to. You can gain offense on the critique, or you can read one of your theories disproves your arguments. Offense reformulate is always possible too. It's a wrong conception. It's a wrong conception of consequences or representation shape reality, which proves the consequences of the one will never be possible. Which also is a terminal defense. All your arguments on the critique, you never get case solvency. Also means the case does definitively not weigh the boss evidence. 1, it presumes magnitude comes first, but you have conceded on the case bed that we can evaluate extinction through probability, which probably indicates that you vote on the critique because it always on probability. There were so many links that were just straight up conceded. And 2, this presumes that you actually reach extinction, but the fact that there's a contradiction in F literature probably means that there's no way for magnitude to actually happen. This just creates policy paralysis. We always take any single action to stop extinction, even though it will never immediately stop extinction because there's always different new forms of threats. That's the link debate. You always try to do whatever you want because there's something that will happen. You say we can your permutation to do both. Oh no, co-option. Just the government will know when we're doing the alternative. Probably means we'll never get all solvency. 2, you said a precedent that government can do whatever they want, which proves our link to being caused by the analyses here that precedent means they can do that precedent means they'll never allow for the alternative and they'll shut down revolutionary potentials with an identity. For example, putting every single person into the military is an example of how we can never act as the war machine, which disproves the critique analysis. You say prior to the other instances. No, we have a good link to the critique. There's no net benefit that the affirmative specifically to rigid educational logic because it's a military draft. That means we outweigh two. You cannot do the affirmative alternative other instances because of the pre-fiat representational critique of the affirmative. We already won. That reps come first, so there's no impact to any of your arguments saying abstract critique is back. No, that's not a question of abstract questioning. It's rather a political act, a micro-political action that the judges should take. Your ballot should be a reorientation towards the state and towards subjectivity, which means it's not some sort of process by which we continually break down the state, but rather just vote on the representations of the one you see are bad, which just proves this. And also, we don't even need to win the alternative because the links prove that even under a policy making framework, the just leads to endless violence because the state can do whatever they want. Lastly, we will go for no, we don't need to go for any more. The case debate. The framing issue here is you've just made an extension of all your arguments, but you have conceded the defense. You say the try or die. No, this justifies any form of policy that can prevent extinction, which is bad because those policies can lead to domestic violence. But we'll go to the case debate. You've conceded that Gomez 12 evidence that war is inevitable because policymakers don't care whether people are trans or not, which is an example of the threat construction. This is proven through studies of what policymakers say and how they empirically act, which means that there's no impact to any of them when I see no global power war because global power war will happen inevitably, but rather we should cultivate subjectivity because that allows us to reconcile with the fact that violence is happening right now. Probably proves the critique outweighs now the framing issue. No, you don't link for the critique. There are other links which disproves which disproves there's pleasure arguments. It also comes by the analysis that pleasure is not intrinsically good. That framing of the 1AR makes it damning for them to go for anything the 2. Lastly, the Bostrom evidence. You've conceded that value to life outweighs any form of extinction because some people would rather die. Some people would rather die than keep being alive. This is an example of when the state imposes violence on people and they internalize that sort of pessimism towards their own identity, which proves that teaching government is always on strength of link. You've only gone for extinction governments, but not answer the warrants of our claims.
Okay. I have 50 seconds. Okay. The order is going to be the advantage framing critique. Is everyone ready? Okay. We are winning that the AVF is unsustainable and will collapse, and that this causes readiness is key to solving great power warrior. You are not winning that the AVF is sustainable, which proves our try or die claim, which answers any true decreasing true quality arguments that you go for. And winning the case proves that the case outweighs the critique, especially when you practically concede the abstract questioning argument, because it proves that the alternative doesn't do anything. You say that you don't need to go for the alternative, but that's not true because the alternative is key to generating uniqueness for any of the link arguments. It's also key to it's also key to having an impact to any of your arguments. If we are winning our argument that the only thing you do is abstract questioning with no solution, then that proves that you should vote on something concrete like the affirmative. Now, on your arguments, you say that policymakers don't care if either that policymakers continue to congregate war. However, you consider argument that a draft would increase skin in the game, which is strategic to commit some force, which proves that that would make policymakers care. You say that try or die is an excuse for structural violence. However, no, our argument is that if the AVF collapse is inevitable, then if the argument is that the AVF collapse is inevitable, which would turn and outweigh existing forms of structural violence. The framing affirming debate, you have conceded our argument that because there are different conceptions of pleasure and pain, that this proves that we are consistent with a model of subjectivity. UTIL does not say that there are any sort of universal moral truths, rather that the goodness of actions can be determined via their consequences. It does not make any objective statements, which proves that we are consistent with your subjectivity claims. Our Bostrom argument also proves that preventing extinction carries moral weight. You say that value of life outweighs extinction. However, no, extinction forecloses the ability for the value of life to ever improve, which proves that preventing extinction still carries moral weight. Now the critique debate. We will win, but we should be able to weigh the case and that our threats are real, which justifies permutation to the AF in every instance except for the alternative. We say our threats are real. You say that our threats are constructed, and that's an obsession with controlled static state. If we are winning, that fear of death is inevitable via evolutionary program that has programmed us to have a aversion to pain, and this proves that we are not an example of obsession with static control. Rather, we are just a response to a fear of suffering that is inevitable and that it will ensue as a result of the extinction that we are winning is going to occur. This also justifies our permutation. You say that we deem bodies as useless. No, we don't. Rather, that our objective is to prevent the extinction of all people, which does necessitate making strategic choices in order to do that. However, our justification for doing this is not an obsession with static control, rather a fear of suffering, which is inevitable. Way the F is key to policy, education, and ensuring that the debate doesn't restart in the 1AR. You say that hard debate is good debate. This is not an example of hard debate, but rather impossible debate, because you nullify the entirety of one speech and restart the round in the 1AR, which also is bad for education because it means that we cannot have deep contestation. You also don't make an argument for why representation should come first, which proves that we should be able to win the AF in this case. This also justifies the permutation do the alt in every instance. You say that there's no net benefit. The net benefit is the fact that we actually prevent extinction. If fear of death is inevitable, then this is not a normative statement on what we should necessarily do, rather just a fact of what we should do. The abstract fails argument is pretty much conceded. It's not a micro-political action. It rather proves that you don't have alternative solvency.
Good debate.
Good debate.
So you could have asked me something. I could have. You want? Well, wait. Do you have fun?
Not
Well,
you.
like,
Yeah, general sometimes. So like
Food's pretty good. So.
oh, there's food here.
No, I don't think we can.
Oh no, that's what I meant. Okay.
Maybe here's one thing. I wouldn't take so much advice from Tyler Campbell. That's the first thing. Speaking as Tyler's friend.
Yeah, he just went around and he voted prior to
Jesus.
I can get them, or
Fife, Westwood. Over, do you think the negative treated counterplan argument is pretty good? I mean, you could potentially shift between like what the status quo is. I mean, I can see the argument there, but there's one argument that hurts at all.
Because you could also shift what the counterplan says.
Okay, yeah, sure.
The same.
Cool. Everybody's here. Congrats to both teams for making it to the double opt finals of the Greenhill tournament. The decision is a 3-0 for the affirmative. Sure.
Yeah, no, I just thought like, I don't know, I found myself saying this a lot this weekend, I guess, but I just, at the end of the day, like, don't think that the negative is given like a robust explanation of the critique in the context of the app. In particular, the impact section. So a lot of the NR seems to hang its hat on this argument that representations shape reality. So the kind of like ontological or metaphysical picture of humanity that the affirmative paints is somehow relevant to their impact scenario. And you go for this threat construction argument, but I think there's a couple problems. I think the first is that the link block in this debate is just so scattered throughout the K-flow that I really have to like dig through my flow to find like what the link exactly is. And then second is I don't think that the impact section of it is explained in the context of the AF advantages at all. So at one point you say something to the effect of like, oh, well, they're working for the government, so they'll have this like crazy amount of control. But like, I think it would do better to think of it less as just like conscription, as like a very superficial, like government makes people do X, versus like what she says the government is making people do, right? Which is namely recruiting like higher quality troops to fill in this recruitment gap or whatever and fight wars abroad. And I think there's a whole host of ways that you could spin this that I just like don't get in the NR. And so from a more technical level, I think on the subjectivity stuff, I just think she's like kind of correct on this, that like I don't by the end of the debate, like I don't understand the links you're going for on util. And I just like really don't understand your response to her argument that's just like, look, I don't say things are good or bad. I just say that like people feel things and we should care about it. I think the way that this argument is presented is a little bit like overly reductive, because it's not as if your evidence is like things are subjective, therefore objectivity is bad. It's more the idea that there is a like coherent subject that receives, it's like a deeper kind of metaphysical critique that goes beyond just like, I'm standing up and you're sitting down, like what you said in cross-ex. So I just don't think there's a very good explanation of how the case links. And then the place that gives me a little bit of pause is the Henry extension. Like I definitely think that I definitely think that like you should have a response to like you're militaristic and allow the state to coerce people, but like I guess to be frank, like I just don't understand the way that you've explained the link in the context of the impact and alternative. So the link is like what you say is that it controlling spaces because it keeps identity static and you separate between eligible and not eligible people. Like that just seems again like kind of bizarrely like superficial, like, oh, you assume static identity because there are people outside of the military and inside of the military. And like I don't understand how that like dichotomy or view of the world is like the same way of I don't think that like vibes matches up, links up with, I don't know, jives. That's what I was trying to say. I don't think it jives with the impact or alternative very well, at least as it's explained there. I think at the end of the day for me, like, I think going into the 1AR is like so generic that I think if the NR had just like been a little bit more organized and a little bit more nuanced in the way you explained, like we're doing argument comparison, I think you would have like won very like quite easily. But I just like I'm looking over my flow for like a link, like just a standard like link impact. Here's how the alternative solves, and I just like didn't get it.
I don't necessarily differ a lot. I guess I kind of engaged in trying to go through the steps of the decision calculus a touch more in terms of the like, do I weigh the AF, util, all that fun stuff. But overall, I agree that the sole impact I'm really getting extended in a warranted fashion from the NR is this like everyday micro political violence that like if I am not qualified to join the military, people make fun of me because I'm not good enough to serve in the military. And ultimately, I think that when that's the sole impact you're really extending, that like, should I care about a few people who get left out because we're trying to impose ourselves on the world? Like, I agree with your framing arguments at the top of the NR. Like, this is a question of does the order that the F tries to impose on the world, is that a good thing? And the impact, like the people left by the wayside as we try to like structure U.S. hegemony are the people who like can't serve, and that's the example I'm getting from the NR. You've not given me the like hundreds of thousands of Iraqis who've been like, you know, slaughtered and had their infrastructure destroyed. You've not given me the like people in Africa who are like starving to death because U.S. imperialism retains all its resources. Like all the like huge casualties that I think of when I think U.S. readiness and hegemony have been like left out of your speech. And I think those are excellent examples to reference, as is you've only framed your impacts in terms of like the draft level of the AF, not the like imposition of U.S. hegemony level, which I think would be a very easy place to draw this out. Overall, I think that like, yeah, it sucks for those people, but ultimately U.S. hegemony prevents extinction. You've conceded that advantage. I think that like when comparing the like, should I weigh the AF part of the like framework level of the debate, I think that the like moots the 1AC is a pretty reasonable argument if I should just like ignore the entirety of the AF advantage because you assert so. I think a more reasonable argument for you moving forward would be that I should only weigh 1AC impacts if the AC can justify them epistemologically. Like if Danielle could like justify the impact construction, that like the authors behind US readiness and all these think tanks, like if they're making valid claims, then she could weigh them. But then that would give you the option of saying like they're all bankrupt, US imperialists, blah, blah, blah. If you could disprove the epistemological background, then I should reject it. And I think that's kind of the middle ground that most of these debates have gotten to, and it's weird to see you go like all the way, like not just reject it altogether, at least without spending more time on that framework debate. I also think that I should prioritize future lives and extinction impacts. I think for closing value of life for others is, at least in this debate, something I should be concerned about. So at that point, extinction outweighs like some people like being made fun of because they can't get drafted. I think there's a lot of room for you to make more robust impact arguments, and I also think like you say like our impacts turn case, but you do not offer a qualification for that statement. A more robust defense of that argument would probably also factor very heavily into my decision. Like if we're imposing order on the world, it inevitably creates terrorism and backlash to U.S. hegemony. That'd be a good argument. There's a great Baudrillard card that you can read there that I can link you if you're ever curious. But overall, I think that's kind of where it boils down. More impact, more framing of the role of the ballot. Also, why did you kick the alt? I think the alt could have given you some more flexibility. For the F, two quick arguments. I'm not sure why you didn't extend your like war equals structural violence impact. That'd be an easy way to like access some of his arguments, or a much more. I think another argument that would be very effective is the like U.S. democracy might be bad and annoying, but like imagine living under Russia or China, any of the other people who win the Great Power War, who would impose more totalitarianism upon society. I think DNG would probably dislike them more since they dislike fascism. That's a pretty good argument to make.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I agree both with the sort of like things were confusing and like more framing would be important. So like you spend a bunch of time answering her like can't move the 1AC, but then you don't have like your own alternate framework or like role of the ballot or something that's like equally abusive or like attempts to, you know, take advantage of marginalizing certain AF arguments. So either just be like, this is just an impact framing question and move on, or like do something with all that time that you have there, like make an argument for why, you know, like he was saying, epistemology comes first or something. That would definitely be helpful. I thought in a bunch of places there's just like not really a lot of clash about the argument. So like the AF is like ev bio proves like fear innate, and then you're like, but identity is becoming, and it's like Deleuze and Guattari aren't denying like we've evolved teeth and fingers. You know, it's like that's not what's becoming. So like these two arguments don't really line up, and so there's room for either of you, I think, to take advantage of those things. And I thought that kind of the problem for me for the neg is that you kind of gave like 2 run and gun speeches, and by that I mean like a lot of stuff and not a lot of explanation. So like Zanotti, like originally your doc had like 5 Zanotti arguments, but they were all combined to like 25 words, and you kind of like skipped through, and I wasn't really sure what you said there. And then when you extended it, you were like, oh, they conceded all these arguments, and then you kind of did the same thing in like 5 seconds, tried to extend a bunch of different stuff. And so in some instances, less is more, and this is probably one of those. In either the NC or the NR, you need like a more in-depth explanation of some of these link arcs. Like threat construction was like another one. Like you talked about that a lot, but like I didn't know like what evidence made that argument or what was talking about it from your speech. So I like went and looked, and like you did have a card that talked about like fear and paranoia, but not really a card like, I mean, it's a hegemony case. Like you should definitely have a link about like hegemony being a problematic concept. A couple of things for the AF. So I would say way too much time on the case in the 1AR. Like a bunch of these arguments are like the opposite. Like the draft doesn't reduce war. You're reading hedge goods. That's the opposite of what you want to say. Just like blow through those faster. And then, you know, I would ideally like to see like a card on value to life or like a card about to lose or something. Like I think I've judged you like 3 times now against completely different critiques. It's like Bostrom and then Bryant's like every time. So I definitely think the like neg has some opportunities given that. And then the last thing I'd say is like you kind of introduced like judge choice and whatnot, and I think like a better argument in this instance would just be like you have to have links to the plan. So if it's like a link to my util framing, that's like not a reason the AF should lose. That's a reason that argument should go away. Like if you read a card on politics and they were like that author is biased, that wouldn't be like a voting issue. It would be a reason that card is bad. So if like one of your 100 justifications for util is bad, it seems like a very low bar for the negative winning if just like critiquing that equals you lose.
Thank you very much.